Hello guys, I'm no Jack. This is the first video I do like this, talking in English about some variety, doing a vlog, okay? I'm a guy that grew up with Final Fantasy IX. That was the first Final Fantasy game I played. I was very young, maybe around 8 or 9 years old. I worked to a store in my city, so young, by myself, and going with some monies I stole from my mother. And I found these two games, and the guy that was running the store said, "Look, these two games, Final Fantasy 8 and 9, have 4 discs in it. They just cost around 20." And I remember if I we had already euros, maybe yes. They don't cost a lot, and they have a lot of content in it. Okay, so I was very young. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, and I bought these two games. I gave Final Fantasy 8 maybe to a friend. Uh, I was a very hyperactive guy, a kid, and a friend of mine said, "Oh wait, this is Final Fantasy. This is an amazing game. You are not smart enough to play these games. Let me play it." It was my friend, and I didn't take offense in that. I was thinking that I was just a rude, strong guy. And maybe okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe that game is not for me. I gave the games to him, and some weeks later, my friend, my old friend, said I asked him how was going with Final Fantasy. He showed me. He said that he was stuck and he was not able to go ahead. And he gave these games back to me, my games. I started playing them, and that was the moment I found out that since I was like a rude, hyperactive, and also strong little kid, that doesn't meant that I was not smart, that I was not enough to play a game that needed you to do something different. That was not just action. So Final Fantasy IX, that was the first game I played from 8 and 9. I had both, but I played the 9 for first. Uh, Touch me. It's touch correct. That everyone can be able to do something. Touched me that I could be smart too. Touched me that I was enough. I could be more than just an hyperactive, rude kid. And that was the first gift that the series Final Fantasy gave to me. I kept playing this game. I still remember the first time I was able to end the game. We were really struggling with the final boss, and one friend of our, or me, and another friend, and another one that was older than us, was at the end able to finish this boss. It was very, very hard. After a lot of attempts, we were able to finish this boss. And I still remember the crazy feelings of the moment where we were able to end the game, see the ending, amazing ending. I just had only 9 or 10 years old. I was not able to fully understand how fucking deep was Final Fantasy IX. And later on in my years, by playing that game again, reading better the dialogues, understanding better the things, the story, the depth of that game, Final Fantasy IX was one of the most important thing in my life. It made myself. It made what I am today. I feel like a generous person that cares about others, that cares about humanity, that cares about truth, that cares about what is right. And that's all thank you to Final Fantasy. That's why I love Final Fantasy. Okay? I think that during the last years, Square Enix did a lot of mistakes with Final Fantasy, starting with small mistakes, maybe with Final Fantasy 12, and maybe even with 10. Even if 10 is one of the most beloved games, he had his issues already. But the problem is that when there was issues, there was always something amazing and very good. For example, a lot of people don't like Final Fantasy 12, but today, today, Final Fantasy 12 is still, in my opinion, the best turn-based RPG ever made. In talking about the combat system, talking about the game design, and also the level design, that game is damn amazing. It's one of the most deep RPG games ever made. There is the gambit system where you can open a menu and decide what your other characters will do, what your main character will do. And you can just work. And for example, you can put strings of actions like see enemy, use attack. Okay? But see enemy that is weak to fire, use fire. And you put these strings on top of each other, and the one that is higher has priority. So, for example, if you put yourself low HP, use healing on top, and then second action attack enemies. If your HP are high, you just attack enemies. But as soon as your HP are low, your character stops attacking and heals because you put the healing string higher. That's fucking amazing. And there are a lot more things, a lot of side quests, aunt, so many things on Final Fantasy 12. But maybe his story was too political. It was not very similar to previous Final Fantasy, with more focus on the characters, on the inner struggle of the characters. Later on, we have Final Fantasy 13. I think that Final Fantasy 13 had a lot of issues because it was too linear, even if Final Fantasy 10 was linear too. But the difference is that Final Fantasy 10 had an amazing story and amazing characters. Final Fantasy 13 didn't. They had very cringe and pathetic characters, unfortunately. Even if you maybe love some of them, okay? For example, the black guy, I don't remember his name, unfortunately. So, but Final Fantasy 13 still had something interesting. It was his combat system. It was not bad. You had a kind of job system, and in Final Fantasy 13 too, they added some depth in that. They added depth in that combat system. They made that combat system even better. And Final Fantasy VII Remake uses the combat system of Final Fantasy 13, where while your RTB active time battle um, string thing charges, you can choose to do one or more actions that needs more time to load. It's something that comes from Final Fantasy 13. So even if Final Fantasy 13 had issues, it still had something good. But then we end up with Final Fantasy 15 that had a lot of trouble with this development. And that's why, in my opinion, Final Fantasy 15 is the first Final Fantasy game that has almost nothing good. Almost nothing at all. I bought that game in the Royal Edition for 20 euros, and I was not able to play more than 1 hour because the game was too bad, was too broken. Since the start of the game, if you are an hardcore player like me, or you are very smart and good at seeing I'm watching game system, level design, game design, understanding how to broke a game. You instantly break the game. You instantly notice that the game is completely unbalanced. It makes no sense. He had a lot of issues in the structure of the game design, in the combat system, and the story was very, very bad. They had to rewrite the story. They had to give you the DLC that changed the ending. Not changing the ending like um, secondary ending or secret ending. They just deleted the first ending and added a new, different ending because the games made no sense. This is unacceptable. And here we are today at the moment where I, from Italy, decide to talk to a more wide, I had to find the word on Google, audience, a more wide audience of people, okay? Because of these words here. So, talking about people today, this is the main director of Final Fantasy XVI. Well, people know Final Fantasy series is just not something that they're interested in playing, okay? It doesn't have that kind of hook that wants to bring them into the series, especially because a lot of younger gamers, those gamers that have grown up playing first person shooters and grown up playing the Grand Theft Auto games, it's no longer a series that's tantalizing for them, and that's okay. But the problem stays here. What we wanted to do is we wanted to change that up and create something that excites those players as well, not just the legacy players. So, okay, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. So they want to change Final Fantasy because they want to excite younger gamers. So they decide to do an action game, thinking that since that's more fleshy, that should be the nice direction for for the Final Fantasy series. Okay. So about what makes a Final Fantasy game, the director says, and one thing that I remember that Kitase told me is that Final Fantasy is basically what the director of that game is making at that time thinks. What the director of that game is making at that time thinks is the best thing to do. So you're telling me that Final Fantasy is just what the fucking director thinks at the moment. So if my mother, okay, it's taken as a director, and my mother thinks to not do the game because she doesn't like game, what my mother think is Final Fantasy. Of if if the director is chosen by Square Enix Uber boss, that makes that since the Square Enix Uber boss decided that this guy is the director, so whatever this guy think, it's correct. This is what a Final Fantasy is. I don't think so at all. In my opinion, and I will tell you now what is a Final Fantasy. If you want to know what a fucking Final Fantasy is, you just need to go play your fucking Final Fantasies from the first fucking game. And you know what you will understand? That you're right, Final Fantasy is not a turn based RPG. Final Fantasy was always um, watching to the future, was always trying to be some way flashy, some way more close to an action game because of the action time battle ATB. because instead of just performing your action in a sequence, you perform your actions based on how much speed you have. Faster you are, more faster this line fulfills. And when it's full, you can perform an action. If a character is fast double compared to another, it will attack twice. Will be able to do two actions instead of one. So Final Fantasy was already different. Was already trying to be different from other Final Fantasy, from other RPGs of the time, and they always experimented. But in my opinion, in 2023, taking a game that is an RPG and making it an action game is not the right choice. And it's useless that you say this thing to yourself to try to prove you're right, because you're not right. Because this is wrong. And because, okay, Kitase is an important figure for Final Fantasy, but the father of Final Fantasy is this guy here, is Sakaguchi. And I really struggle to think that Sakaguchi would be alright with something like this. So, what is a Final Fantasy? Final Fantasy is just a great game with great characters that live an epic story together. They grow together, and that's it. Final Fantasy has always been a story about characters being together, growing together, and reaching an end in an epic, crazy story about life, death, friendship, love. Okay? And talking about the combat system of Final Fantasy, the problem there, okay, I don't think that, yeah, like you could try to go into the action, but the problem is that another important point, that's what a Final Fantasy in its core is. But Final Fantasy has always been also a party game, a game about having a party, having people with you. What makes very exciting about a Final Fantasy is when you get another guy that will play with you um, on your side, when you will be able to combine his abilities with your abilities, and that will make the fight interesting, because at the start you have just the main card that just uses standard melee attacks on the enemy, okay? But then appears the fucking mage. Then appears the healers. So suddenly you stop using just potions and you have healing magic. You have fire magic. Maybe there are some combos. Then there is the alchemic that combines items to make new things. Then there are side quests. Then there are hidden bosses. This is what the game system of Final Fantasy did. You have the story, you need to go from point A to point B, and during that line, you can move up and down, doing side quests, and if you do, you get upgrades, you become stronger. Then you get into the boss, the main story boss. You are super strong, and you feel rewarded for exploring. You explore it, you become strong, you beat the main boss easier. Then, if you get it at the end of the game, the final boss is very easy for you, but there are secret bosses. This is what Final Fantasy was, and you do all of this with a party, with more people playing with you. Exactly how Final Fantasy VII Remake did. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake was in the right direction. So why you want to switch to an action game because you think that you want to appeal to a more wide audience of younger people playing Grand Theft Auto. Plus, like, what the fuck? Can you fucking explain me? If people grow up with Grand Theft Auto, why you want to make Final Fantasy a fucking Devil May Cry game? When you have fucking Skyrim, that it's one of the most successful RPG ever made. Maybe that's the fucking direction. Maybe the direction is to make it for you possible to have more interactions, more depth into the game, like previous Final Fantasies, like Final Fantasy XII was. Not to make your game an action game, just because it's more fleshy. A game like Skyrim can be very fast, because you can just go straight to the point, okay? And this doesn't mean that, like, you can use some kind of similar system. But the problem is that what makes the difference, why Skyrim is more successful than Final Fantasy in the last days? Because of interaction. Because Skyrim was a game where you can interact more. When you don't have usually a party, but you can relate to your main character. You feel like you're him in a world. That makes the game amazing. And that is the same thing that makes a Grand Theft Auto game amazing. Because people relate to that characters. People live that world. It's not about making an action game. This is not what that game needs. And if the last Final Fantasies had issues, was not because they were not flashy enough and fast enough. It was that these last games were not good. These last games had a lot of issues. Final Fantasy XIII had not a good story, was too linear, had not content enough. Final Fantasy XV was a total fucking mess, completely broken and bad, ugly, cringe game. That was the problem. You don't need to copy Devil May Cry. You just need to do a good game. And if you want to change something, why you're copying a game that sold 6 million units today, 2022, when Final Fantasy VII sold 3.5 fucking million copies in fucking 3 days? Wait, no, I'm wrong. Oh, yes. And over 5 million by August 2020. And today we are 2023. I'm pretty sure Final Fantasy VII Remake sold more than Devil May Cry 5. So why the fuck are you copying a fucking action game? Now, they say I don't know if it's here. The structure will be similar to God of War, and that's good. We're talking about the structure because there will be wide areas to explore. You can just go to the point where you go ahead. You can go back in previous areas and explore more, and that's good. I think the game design here of the exploration is perfect. It's not bad. It's not bad. But I'm not so sure that changing the game in an action is the perfect way. I don't think that this game will make you sell 20 million copies because you switch it to an action theme. Another very, in my opinion, cringe thing I read here is that this guy is telling that he's now 50 years old. So he's tired of anime art style young characters. So he wants a more serious story. I will tell you something. The idea of that a story is serious because the main character looks serious in his face is something that just a boomer think. It's not something that a young guy thinks. I swear that these guys here are like 1 million times more serious than whatever character you want to make that just have a serious face. Because what makes a character serious depth is not having a serious face. Is not being a tormented dark guy. This is some boomer cringe thing. That's not something from today. What makes these characters serious, important, depth is that they have credible stories. Is that they are actually smart and they are able to grow. Because, like, you can see Zidane, she's small. You can see Queen, she's fucking. Look at her face. What the fuck is this face? But then, there is a moment where, with just a few lines, Queen makes you understand that she's very smart, that she has a philosophy, that she understands that there is something very important for her in the world, and you understand they are deep, they are good, maybe they are good person, maybe they suffer it too, but they don't want to show you they're struggling, so they are much more stronger than the average cringe, dark, tormented with a bad face guy. There is a moment where the main character, that is generous, humble, funny, but also strong, fights this guy here, Amaranth. Amaranth enters the group. Initially, is a rival, and he fights Zidane. He hates Zidane, and you know what? Why? Because he doesn't like the fact that Zidane is so smiley. He thinks Zidane is just an idiot. But then Zidane shows him that he's not just an idiot. He's so far ahead. He's so much smarter. He's so much deep. He understands the life so much better than him. That he just wants to be happy. Just want to smile. He just want to enjoy life. And that's why he smiles. That's why he plays stupid. But it's not stupid. He really understands what's important in the life. To try to care for the people you love that are around you. It doesn't matter like following stereotypes. It doesn't matter trying. For example, Steiner. Steiner want to play the rude, strong cavalier that needs knight that needs to protect the princess at all cost. Not thinking about himself. Not even thinking about what the queen really wants. The princess really wants. But Zidane shows him that this is not the correct way. That he can that he's playing a character. He's not himself. He's not that guy. He should start thinking about himself. He should start questioning who he is. You're not just the knight that protect the princess. Who you really are. Maybe just a guy that I don't want to spoil the story like too much. But it's like a guy that doesn't know around anything, almost anything about the life. And again, the main character, so smiley, slowly teaches him everything. And when we are close to the end, we have one of the best dialogues, maybe in the history of literature, made by Vivi, that talks about life, talks about what their friends gave to him. I almost feel like crying. Think about that. That's a fucking depth story, serious story about death, about life, about reality, about our world. That's what makes Final Fantasy IX one of the best Final Fantasy ever. That's what makes a Final Fantasy a good game. Because he's a fantasy. He looks stupid. He looks funny. But they are talking about the real world, with their emotions, with their situation. You don't need a scary face. You don't need to be darker. You just look cringe. We don't know the story already. Maybe these guys are actually funny. Maybe they will not try to be serious during the entire story, feeling very forced, very false, not real, just stereotypes. Maybe they will not just stereotypes. Maybe they will be better than we think. But reaching this level here, it's not easy. And this is not the answer. This is not the way, in my opinion. So forcing Final Fantasy into something more serious, more dark, just like just by looking dark, just by looking flashy with an action system or an action combat system, is not the way. It's not why these games were amazing. And now let's go to the end of this very big video. For Feast, talking about sales. Why you copy the... Okay, well, the combat director of Final Fantasy XVI is the same of Devil May Cry 5. This is a problem. I want to ask you something. You think it's better to control just one character at a time in action, or having your character plus two characters that maybe you can control in some way fighting all together? The answer is that it's better to have three characters fighting together. So, for me, it could be fine if you have an action battle system. But you need to let me control at least one more guy. At least let me fight with two people together at a time, not just one. At least let me have some control over a party member that fights alongside me so that we can have some combos, some synergies that makes the combat system deep. So this is the problem about the combat system. It's not about just being an action and not an RPG anymore. It's about the fact that if you just 1v1 the enemies, if you just play one character at a time, there is no depth anymore in the combat system. And yes, and another thing, if you if your game is an RPG, it doesn't mean the game is easy just because just because it's turn based. It's not like this. And you can also make an RPG with some system that likes auto levels characters, auto unlocks skills, so that you can play the game as an action without thinking too much about RPG mechanics. So everyone can play the game, okay, maybe in normal difficulty. And then if you want more depth, you can just decide you what skills unlock and whatever you want, like a true RPG. There are a lot of things that you could do to make the game well without needing to change the game in something that the game is not. Because Final Fantasy is not a single player action game. It makes no sense. And to another thing, like what the fuck? Final Fantasy XIV is what is giving Square Enix the more monies. Like the most money of the Square Enix company comes from Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO RPG. So why the fuck, if your most successful game is an RPG, you do Final Fantasy XVI as an action game? This makes no sense. Even more, Final Fantasy XIV here in this article, I don't know from what year he is. He was like fourth place as one of the most successful MMO, the most played MMORPG in the entire world. In 2023, Final Fantasy XIV is the most played MMORPG ever. Has become the most played MMORPG in 2023. Like, what the fuck? Final Fantasy XIV is the most played RPG in the world. Why are you making Final Fantasy XVI an action game? What's wrong with your fucking brain? This is completely stupid. What's wrong with Square Enix? Skyrim sales 30 million copies. It's a fucking RPG. They were complaining about talking JRPG, Japan RPG. Oh, is racist saying Japan RPG? No, it's not. A Japan RPG is an RPG based on a party, and that's it. While Western RPGs like Skyrim's have just one character. It's not racist. You're changing Final Fantasy to an action game. It's not even an RPG anymore, probably. Well, at least change it to a Skyrim-like game. I don't know. Why you are copying a Devil May Cry? Why you are imitating this game? A game that is not even so successful. It makes no sense. Elden Ring sold 20 million copies. Is another Western RPG. Is an action RPG where the main focus is the exploration. Like you don't need to do an Elden Ring like game based on that kind of lore, etc., etc. But if you wanted a combat system, what the fuck? He sold 20 million units. Why you just don't use a combat system more similar to Elden Ring? And the last problem. So they decided to use an action system because they think they will sell more. This is the main problem. This is the reason I'm doing this video. Because great games are not based on thinking what I can do to sell more. Great games are born with an idea about how to play the game. And then you create story, characters, and a lot more things around that. Zelda Breath of the Wild developers said that they thought about the game first, and then they made the story around the game. The gameplay was the fucking core. It was not an accessory that you can change. I'm pretty sure that when Miyazaki made the Dark Souls, he didn't think, oh, I have a story, now let's think about a game system. Oh, making the game very hard and convoluted probably will sell a lot of copies. Let's use this to make the first Demon Souls. No, he didn't think like this. He thought, I love hard games, difficult games. I will do a fucking hard game. And people started loving this kind of thinking. People started loving the idea. And today, fucking Elden Ring 12 sells 20 million units. Because Elden Ring is born from an idea. It's not born from the idea of just choosing the system that sells more. And then making the mistakes of choosing a system that doesn't sell. Because this thing It's not selling. It's five, it's six, around 6 millions. It's not 20 millions. It's not 30 millions. If Final Fantasy XVI story will be really worth and amazing, I will probably buy it. But I know that will never reach this peak. This will never reach these heights. These depths will never be so good, so important to leave something not inside me, but inside new kids. Final Fantasy IX changed my fucking life. A fucking stupid game that is dark just to sell more will never be able to leave something inside kids today. This is not what Final Fantasy is. This is not what Final Fantasy was. And this is why I'm here. And I don't know how many people will see this until the end. But this is what Final Fantasy is. This, not this. And I hope that I helped someone understand what Final Fantasy was and what Final Fantasy can be. And I really think, I never say things like this, but now I really think that not buying this fucking cringe game could be the way to save Final Fantasy. Because if Final Fantasy XVII will be able to change the life of a kid that is 9 years old, like Final Fantasy IX did with me, it's not because we will buy this game. Because if they think that just changing to action is what will make this game a success, next game will be another cringe action game. And so Final Fantasy will be dead forever. Thank you for watching.